Good morning and happy Tuesday. My name is Deborah, aka the Sunsetgirlcreates, and today is Tuesday. Come cross stitch with me. So get your cross stitch out or whatever whip and chat you're working on. WIP stands for work in progress. So whatever work you're working on, grab it right now and join me. We'll get started on our cross stitch today. We're watching Balloon Fantasy, and it's a big picture to try to get on the camera, but here is a view of the whole entire picture. I am currently working right in here along the edge. So that's where we're going to be working, is to be putting the border in. So that's what we're going to be doing next. On my canvas, you're going to see that I also, the pattern is from Pretty Stitch Art, and the fabric that I have is also from, I can't see her name. Okay, it's Rainbow Watercolor, and it's Pulp Stitchin' Aberdeen. And it's a rainbow watercolor cross stitch Ada 14 count cross stitch fabric 14 count even weed canvas. So those are what I'm working, what supplies I'm working with today. I'm also working with my my cross stitch stand that I got off of Etsy. It's just one of the basic simple wooden ones. It will allow me to do the bigger cross stitches or however I want to set things up. It gives me a little freedom. I know that my fabric's going to stay taut. So that's what we'll be working on today. We're also going to be reading an article from the Spruce Crafts. It's called Needlepoint versus cross stitch. What's the difference? So I'm going to put my iPad down in my lap so that I free up my hands. Now that we're done seeing everything, I'm going to free it up, and as I stitch, I can read. So let's get started. I know I've got 27 of these stitches to put down, so we're just going to get started. This one is much easier for me to see. As you can see, I did take the Christmas one down. I had a long talk and discussion with my husband, and because that is an expensive kit that I have, and I want to be able to do it properly and not make mistakes. And there's some mistakes in it that have to be fixed, but I can't see well enough. So I'm hoping that I will get a I'm hoping I get a magnifier light that I can snap on and hold on my piece, where I can have the light and the magnifier so that I can actually see what I'm doing. I can see doing it on camera. I can see it in the camera. But I'm not going to sit here and do my whole cross stitch when I'm sitting here watching TV with a camera showing so I can see my stitches. It's just not a feasible thing right now. So I will be working on Balloon Fantasy. We will continue working on this one till it is done. I will not be bringing the other pattern out until this one's done. We have one more hot air balloon that we will be working with. I have two patterns. I couldn't choose which one I liked better, so I bought all the pattern and thread and fabric that was needed to be able to do that one as well. I have done a little on my balloon. I added some kind of the wire mesh it's a blue, and I kind of put it in there, and I'm going to go back over all of the half stitches that I have here in the light blue, and I will be putting the kind of flashy metal kind of metallic thread over it so that you see the blue, but also you see that little metallic sheen. So I'll be working on that eventually. In the actual hot air balloon, I did only one layer with that. For the rest, I will be doing two, and it will be right on top of these same stitches. They are half cross stitches, so those are completed stitches. I have part I have like 3 more rows of this light blue to go, but I knew that this would be a little bit, it would take me a little bit longer to get this section done than it would take me to get that other section done, because I've got to put 27 stitches in and then knit on down. I'm thinking about changing Tuesdays Come Cross Stitch With Me to more of the floss tube kind of way. So I want to get into, I'm going to start watching a few floss tubes and kind of get a new format for the cross stitch, only because sometimes with cross stitch it does get difficult sometimes to be able to see and record what I'm doing at the same time. So I have this little tiny area, it's about 6 inches between the material itself and the camera, so it's really in close, and so I can talk and the microphone picks up very well in my phone, as well as I can get a nice close-up view so you guys can see what I'm working on. And we're gonna do kind of a back and forth, not all the time will we be doing cross stitch. I may just be talking about some patterns or some articles that I've seen, or you know, what would I like to do next year. We might look for some patterns to kind of look at and maybe do some pattern tours and see what kind of patterns we can find. I think it would be nice to like choose 5 or maybe 5 or 10 patterns and then kind of show you guys what I do once I find a pattern and how I go for picking it up to building up making sure that I have the floss that I need as well as the rest. What makes these two needle crafts unique? See for yourself in this completed comparison of materials, stitches, and style. Okay, like so many types of craft, even within each of these needle crafts, there are variations in different ways you can choose to stitch them. For example, one common needlepoint style you might see is a pillow or seat cover stitched entirely with a simple tent stitch. Forming a design. Other times you might encounter a highly textured piece with a variety of stitches. Cross stitch brings similar variety in that you can stitch a large filled-in area with lots of detail, or a small motif with only basic cross-stitch stitches. So there's a lot of similarities, right? They're both needle crafts. They both use a thread. They both have a specific canvas you can use. This is Aida cloth specifically for cross stitch. You also have plastic canvas, or you can do an Aida cloth like this and still do a, it's a little harder to do the cross stitch or the needlepoint on this, but it's much easier on the plastic canvas. I do have some of that. I don't have any specific yarn to be able to needlepoint, even if I wanted to. I'd have to order the yarns and do all of that to be able to do it. I have it for other reasons, for using, like if I make backpacks or purses, I can cut them and use them on the bottom, and they'll leave a nice way of putting something together, and then it stays flat on the bottom. Okay? Other times you might encounter a highly textured piece with a variety of stitches. Cross stitch brings similar variety in that you can stitch a large filled-in area with lots of details, or a small motif with only basic cross stitches. Before exploring a full comparison of these two techniques, let's take a look at the characteristics of needlepoint and cross stitch. So let's look at what their characteristics are. Okay, so needlepoint. This counted embroidery technique includes a vast array of stitches worked on a sturdy canvas. In some ways, this method is the hybrid between cross stitch and crewel or surface embroidery. So needlepoint, their fabric Needlepoint uses even weave fabric, which is usually referred to as a canvas. This type of canvas ranges from finer canvases all the way up to plastic canvas, but all have the structure to support heavier stitching. Some projects use painted canvases, which you stitch over the colors, filling them in almost like a paint-by-number piece. Yeah, my mom used to make a bunch of coasters, and I thought about it because I need some coasters in my house, so I might make up some coasters. But that's usually the extent of what I do for needlepoint. Threads. You may use many different types of thread in needlepoint, but the most common is Persian or tapestry wool. This type of yarn is strong and holds up to pulling through the canvas. Plus it lasts when making heirloom pieces. Many designs allow you to add in all kinds of specialty threads as well, giving your work a unique look. Okay? And so that's what I've been doing. I like to do with mine, is to find a way to enhance it. Bring something out, make something pop that didn't pop before, those kind of things. Stitches. The most basic needlepoint stitch is called the 10th stitch, which you can work in several ways. This stitch is common on the classic needlepoint pillow, but there are so many stitches you can use to create texture in your stitching. These allow you to make realistic bricks or baskets in a design, but also gorgeous geometric patterns. Cross stitch. Now this is cross stitch. We just went over our needlepoint. The counted embroidery technique uses cross stitch stitches to form designs on fabric. Cross stitch is sometimes compared to pixel art because of how the designs are formed on a grid. Okay, so it's cross stitches similar to diamond painting, right? You get symbols on a pattern and you make crosses or half crosses or whatever the stitch is that's required for that canvas. It could be a back stitch, it could be a cross stitch, it could be a French knot. There's a lot of different types of stitches out there that you can be done. Fabric. Cross stitch typically uses an even weave fabric, and the two most common are Aida cloth and linen. So this is an Aida cloth, and the Aida cloth has squares. So there's a certain amount. If they say that this is 14 count Aida, that means that there's 14 stitches per inch. So you do 1 inch and you got 14 stitches. You do up an inch, you got another 14, and do it all the way around and you have a square, right? And you fill that in, there it's your square, right? So that's what it is. Okay, it's possible to cross stitch on other fabrics with the help of waistcloth, but materials designed specifically for cross stitch make it easier. So you can cross stitch on linen, you can cross stitch on silk, you can cross stitch just about anything. But like it says, you need to have a waistcloth below it. So that means it's something that's being held behind that, and that will help keep it sturdy, right? So, threads. Most cross-stitch patterns recommend stranded cotton embroidery floss. Usually you separate the strands, working with only a few strands at a time. The finer thread works well for the small stitches that make up typical cross-stitch work. You can use specialty threads such as metallics to add some bling or finishing touch. And so that's what this is. This is my metal, right? My metallics. And I've added that in. You can see I also used it to try to get used to it. I've never used it before, so I bordered my cross stitch with it. Stitches. The most basic stitch and cross stitch is a cross or X. Each cross fills in a square on the pattern. Additionally, you can work partial stitches or back stitch to achieve better shaping to the designs. So if you want to do like a really nice back stitch, and I'm going to have to redo this one because there's been some I've had to fix it. But as you can see, you can really see the definition of the hot air balloon now. Like you can see, some of these have fallen down. I'm actually going to pull it all out and redo it and do it nice and neat again. And I'll actually do it at the end, because I was going to do it as I go, but I decided now going to do it this way is probably the better way of doing it. So I'm just going on down. So similarities and differences. So now here's our similarities and differences between the two, okay? And I can show you needlepoint at a different point in time. I don't have one that is even near where I could be able to say, okay, this is what I'm doing. I would probably use acrylic yarn and make up my own pattern for coasters if I'm going to do it. And I might do some of those because they don't take too long to do. Both these techniques use even weave fabric and are types of counted thread embroidery. This means you follow a chart and count the squares or spaces as you stitch. However, cross stitch generally uses tiny X's on a grid, while needlepoint has either lots of small angled stitches or a mix of textured stitches. And so what we call a half stitch in cross stitch, so these are half stitches because I only did one side across, right? So they're considered half stitches. And so that's what those are talking about, okay? They're talking about the stitches. Needlepoint threads or yarns tend to be thicker and the fabric sturdier, while cross stitch uses finer threads on softer fabric. You can use both needlepoint and cross stitch to fill an entire area with stitches. In needlepoint, you almost always cover the whole canvas, while in cross stitch, it's very common to leave open areas of fabric showing. And that's why I went ahead for this one, and I'm using the rainbow kind of tie-dyed color. I had to try to decide on how I wanted the color to flow down as I go through, and I wanted to have some really dark blues up in the upper corner and lighter on this side. I don't know why, it just looked right to me that that's the way we should be doing it. So when working on a cross-stitch project, most stitchers choose to place their fabric in an embroidery hoop. Needlepoint, however, requires a frame to hold the canvas. So I was introduced to these scroll frames that I have by my mother, because this is the scroll frames that she had that she used for cross stitch. And yes, I did ask her before I bought one if she had any left, and she didn't. She had gotten rid of all her, because she had all these stands. She had tons of them. Of course, hers didn't have the splits in them. The split in the wood, which this one does. Back in the day, they didn't have that as well. When working on a cross-stitch pattern, most stitchers choose to place their fabric in an embroidery hook. Needlepoint requires a frame to hold the canvas. Designs for both these needlecrafts come in the form of crafts, charts, and often they can be used interchangeably. However, due to the shape of the stitches and the material used, the results can look vastly different. So let's try both and see which one you like the most. So try them both, see which one you like. I personally like the cross stitch. I like to be able to find from materials. I put my stitches in and really just pretty up my work, right? I think it's more refined than needlepoint in most instances. I'm not going to say all instances. I'm not going to say all, because my mom has done some very, very fine, detailed needlepoints, okay? She did one at Hearst Castle, and then she did one at Bidwell Mansion on the outside. The two main museums that she worked in. She was a museum tech for many, many years for the state of California, and worked in Hearst Castle until she was transferred to Bidwell Mansion up in Chico, California, is where we ended up living, and I spent most of my growing up time, and the time I spent raising my kids were all done in Chico. It's a college town where I come from. The only one of the family that's still in California is my son, and he's in Bakersfield. Other than that, not a whole lot. Yeah. Just, I don't know if he watches my videos or not. If he's found me on YouTube, I don't know. If he does, happy birthday, son. I'm thinking about you yesterday. I sent you a text. I really love you, and I'm wishing the best for you as you go through the rest of your life, and I hope that we catch and can connect soon. That's just something I need to put in there for my son in case he does find this and decides to do it. So that is our complete article. There's really, it's a lot the same, okay? You can get fine detail with both cross stitch and needlepoint. You have a lot of the same colors to work with. Your charts are interchangeable, so if you have a chart for needlepoint but you want to do it in cross stitch, you can take that same one, just get DMC colors instead of the tapestry roll that you would use for cross stitch or for needlepoint. So with that said, I want to thank you all for coming. It's been great having you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, a thumbs down is fine, but please let me know down in the comments below why. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them down. I really appreciate getting the comments. It was great to see some comments come across the videos this week for the first time. I have had a few in the past, but this was the most in 1 week, so thank you for the comments. And let me know what you're working on below. And we want you to be part of the Sunset Girl Creates family. So come join us. All you need to do is hit that subscribe button down below. And you can hit the bell icon next to that. And it'll let you know every time I upload a video. So I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you for the time that you took to spend with me. And this is wishing you a very, very happy Tuesday. Bye-bye.